the
had
mental
nightmares
chains.
about the leader. I had panic attacks that he's coming to get me
When
because
did you start to realize that it was actually a cult?
people from the outside tell you, oh, this place, isn't it like a cult or something? No, I was in denial. I was like admiring my life there. But he had creepy rituals. For example, when we had to stay for Shabbat with the Mechina, everyone just went to his prayers, and his prayers lasted from maybe 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. and people were starving. And he like abused everyone because of his little tradition to pray slowly and quietly and with meaning.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Yasmine Mohammed podcast. Today, my guest is the beautiful Yael. Yael is a wonderful woman who grew up in a kibbutz in Israel with a secular mother and a traditional Moroccan father. She also joined a cult in Jerusalem that she was duped into joining. So we're going to learn all about that. We're going to learn about her work as a musician, as a feminist, as a journalist. There's so much to learn from her today. So, Yael, welcome.
Thank you so much. You're hearing me well?
Yes,
Thank you so much.
perfect.
I'm so happy to be here. Always happy to talk to Yasmin. I'm happy to talk to you and listen to your content. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. I have a lot of pretty tough questions for you, but I know that you're a
Yeah.
tough woman and you can deal with them. So my first question is about the Mizrahi Jewish experience. So I've had some people on the podcast who have sort of wanted to identify as being a Jew from Arab lands. But of course, you don't want to be calling yourself an Arab Jew because those are two different conflicting ethnicities. And so some people say, well, I'm an Arabic Jew. And I'm
Mhm.
just going to give you my little spiel because I really feel that as somebody born and raised in Canada, we get the Ashkenazi experience and we get almost like we think that all Jewish people are Ashkenazi. And if you identify as a Jewish person from the Arab world, it like breaks their brain over here in the West because they're like, what are you talking about? Jews aren't indigenous to the Middle East, right? They can't imagine, they're not used to Jews from like Morocco and Yemen and Syria and Iraq and Iran and the entire Middle East because that's where you are
Wow.
from, right?
Mhm.
So I wanted to ask you about that experience being your mom was a secular woman, but your dad was more traditional. And
Mhm.
specifically, he was Moroccan. So he would have like these Arab cultural things. Because I've spoken to Mizrahi Jewish women who their dads are like maybe Iraqi or Egyptian or something. And they have the same kind of treatment of these
Mhm.
girls, the same treatment that I had, which is like saying shame and you're a girl, you shouldn't do that, and like having these very old traditional, misogynist really ideas of how to raise their daughters. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering, you've read my book, and did you find that we have like a shared, maybe there were
Mhm.
some parts of my experience and your experience where there was some intersection because you have that cultural Arab background?
So I'm just gonna say I'm gonna have to try really hard not to like talk ill of anyone because I'm in touch with my family and I don't want to like, you know, but I'm
Yeah.
gonna try to give some of my experience. So saying what you said reminded me of when I was hitchhiking when I was, I don't know, early 20s, and my grandfather he panicked over that. Like panicked and called my dad who panicked, and that's, yeah, the Moroccan side. But it's like more than panic, it's something of scolding and how dare you do that as a girl, out of also protection, which I get, hitchhiking is dangerous, but there was something more than protection in their tone. So that's like an example of one thing that happened out of many, many times when I drove to my grandfather's house by myself. He was asking me, "Were you driving the car?" Like, yeah, it happens now. And I gotta say again, he passed away, so I feel bad talking about him, and he was a sweet man. But my grandmother told me that he prevented her from working and getting her driving license. So that's how she became such a good housewife. It wasn't so natural of a process. So they stayed married until the last moment. And my grandmother is a very happy, God bless her, person. But I have a complex, I have a conflict with this with my grandmother's story with my dad's mother, and I'll get to it when I talk about the cult, because it's one identity, a female identity that I had in my life, and it definitely influenced me. However, I was surprised to discover when I read your book that Islam is much more severe than Judaism. And at least my family, even the Moroccan traditional one, it's not even close to what's going on in Islam, which was very surprising to me. I used to say, all religions are the same. We're having the same God, like all these hippie stuff. But to be honest, it's not these levels. Maybe in the ultra Orthodox communities, you can find similar things, which I didn't experience, thank God. Not exactly. But I wanted to say actually good things that I found that are in common. I feel like my family, my dad's family, has an interesting approach to faith, that they prefer faith over science. Even when science is available, they'll always choose the being humble and I don't know, and maybe something else will happen, and I can trust God about what's going to happen, about the future, about my health. And again, to explain my dad's side, I'll have to explain my mom's side. So we'll get to that. To the kibbutz, I'll have to compare between the two. The men are very macho. I used to admire them. They're like very physically big, sitting, talking. The women are washing the dishes, cooking, the wives and the sisters. So because my parents were divorced since I remember myself, I grew up with my mom mostly. So whenever I went to like Shabbat at my dad's side, they never made me do those things. I was more like, me and my sister, we were like the kibbutz princesses, which will be more clear when I explain what a kibbutz is.
Mhm.
But we were not a part of this gang, the Moroccan gang, all the way. But again, things that today I'm happy to have in my life that my Moroccan family taught me, which is Shabbat, kosher, mezuzah. We used to carry around the book of Psalms everywhere for luck and safety, which I still do sometimes when I remember. Light candles before Shabbat. We have superstitions. For example, that's, I think, Moroccan, not even Jewish. When a shoe is upside
Yeah.
down,
Yeah.
bad luck. So I still have that OCD with the shoe. So it's interesting to open with this because it's my dad's side that I didn't grow up with full time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's interesting. I mean, I know the religions are very different, but I found the intersection of our cultures, even though you're from a Jewish Israeli, you're a Jewish woman growing up in Israel, but the Arab culture, just because we're all in the Middle East, and obviously like 60% of Israeli people are coming from, they grew up in Arab lands, or at least their families did. They have history, thousands of years history in the Middle East. So there is really there's so many intersections culturally, which is really, I think obvious to you, obvious to me, but it's not obvious to the average person in the West. When they think of Jewish food, they think of bagels, they think of smoked salmon, right? Whereas I'm thinking of like amba and I'm thinking of shawarma and hummus, like we only get one side of the story here, but I just wanted to talk about how like the
Arabness.
the Arabness. Exactly. Yeah.
So for sure, let me describe. So my dad's parents, they came from Morocco when they were kids. My grandmother from the west of Morocco, my grandfather from Casablanca. My grandfather was very brown. My grandmother, they're actually pretty bright because maybe they're Spanish, they have Spanish roots or something. And my grandmother, my childhood food on Shabbat with her is couscous. That's what she
Of course. Yeah.
used. Fish, spicy fish, a lot of um, um
Harissa.
a, a lot of like I'm almost speaking Italian, but automatically a lot of fritti, like a lot of
Fried
fried
things.
foods
Mm.
that are traditionally Mizrahi, and she mixed Mizrahi stuff. She used to tell me like, the kube that I'm making, the kibbeh, is not
Mm.
Moroccan. This version is the Iraqi.
Mhm.
I never studied. I never learned how to make those things. My sister did learn a few things. Um, but it's labor, it's
Yes, it is. Very labor
hard.
intensive.
Can't have a job with this cooking
No,
thing. It
no. Yeah,
you begin on Wednesday, you finish on Friday evening, and yeah, chamin.
yeah.
I don't know if you know, but I think it's called chunt with the Ashkenazi people. So with the Moroccans, it's chamin. It's overcooked. It's an overcooked mix of meat and wheat and eggs, and it's very heavy. And we usually make it, so Ashkenazis make it as well, but Moroccans make it this way with different spices and stuff. So it's being cooked throughout Friday night and Shabbat on a stove, like an electric stove. And then it's overcooked the day after, and that's how we eat it. So that's a traditional Jewish Mizrahi
Very
meal.
cool. So that's your dad's side of the family that you didn't really fully grow up in, but were more familiar with your mom's side at the kibbutz. Now I understand the kibbutz in Israel was almost a necessity because you had so many refugees coming from all over, and they don't necessarily have jobs or they can't provide for themselves. Sometimes it's kids coming by themselves or a single mother coming by herself, or you know what I mean? So it's like
Yeah.
the community, the way for everybody to support each other and take care of each other was necessary, right? Well, it's not necessary, but it was the out
Yeah,
of the good
it was
souls
a
of the people
necessity.
who wanted to take care of each other, this is how they did it, right?
It wasn't, and they would say the same, like it's written down that it's a necessity.
Mm.
So like we have to do it this way, but I'll try to like to explain this movement out of the angle I grew up on, which is kind of
Yeah, tell us what a kibbutz is in
idealizing.
general for anyone who doesn't know.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
kibbutz is, dryly speaking, is a communist village, a Jewish communist village in Israel, in Palestine, before the establishment of the state of Israel in 48. It was a movement, just like Yasmine said, of babies, 18-year-old Jews from Russia mostly, that suffered from aggressive anti-Semitism. I'm still speaking of the late 1800s and the early 1900s, not even Holocaust yet, okay? Not even Nazis yet. So my great grandmother, my mother's grandmother, she lost all her family when the Holocaust started. They were there in a place that is now maybe in Ukraine, where she was born. But she moved when she was about 18. She moved alone So they were doing those trainings for young people to be trained to work in agriculture and, if necessary, weapons in Israel to establish a Jewish state. It had to start somewhere, you know. It wasn't like poof one day everyone moved and shalom. Kilo. It was a process that started decades before. So that great grandmother, she went to this training. It was in the south of the land, and then she met her husband to be, and they moved together to Degania. So since then, my family is here in this kibbutz, which was the first one to be officially announced in 1910. Again, like people can notice the years are not even, we're not talking Hitler yet, you know? So it was, I think they brought a lot of the communism from Russia, and they were religiously oppressed in Russia. People had to hide their Jewish identity even then, and they were attacked for being Jewish if discovered. So a kibbutz, until the last 10 years, was a very secular village containing only Jews, but very secular, very atheist, sharing salaries, living together financially, economically, like a cult without a guru. Everyone has a say on what dress you can buy, on how you can name your son.
Oh, I
Everyone
didn't
has
know
a say.
this.
There's a vote.
Oh, wow.
Everyone votes, or at least the representatives voting. I remember my grandmother told me that her, like my uncle, the oldest son, they had a vote about his name, and that was the name that passed. You know, the name that he got. A lot of jealousy, a lot of jealousy because, for example, my mom's dad, he had a job that let him go abroad a lot and buy some stuff that were not allowed.
Mhm.
For example, like a music player or a record player or a phone. You know, the TV started only then. So my family's legacy in the kibbutz is people are jealous of us because of that period. They had more technological items, and it was, how can I explain that? There was a public phone you could use, but having a phone in your home was like morally not okay. So it started as a necessity, like you said, but it became kind
Mhm.
of impulsive and not necessary.
Yeah.
So growing up in the kibbutz, my kibbutz already changed. It went through a privatization, and there was a vote that said, okay, let's stop this thing. So now, in the last maybe 15 years, Degania has been not communist anymore. So everyone has their own salaries, their own, now it's a process still, but their own houses. It had to go from the ownership of the kibbutz to private people. Yeah, but
So, this checks with my understanding of humanity, to be
yeah, yeah,
perfectly
yeah,
honest. When I first heard of this kibbutz, I was like, that's a utopia that we can't have on this planet.
yeah.
People are too competitive. I felt like not, that the reality of growing up there would probably be very different than the idea of
Mhm.
it because we're just too, like you described, right? We're too petty, we're too jealous, we're too competitive. So I can imagine that
And we
being
have
the
different
case.
needs. So
Yeah.
trying to force each other to the same needs
Yeah.
and decide
Oh, that
for
would
each
drive me
other.
crazy. Yeah.
I
If
know.
somebody, if they said you have to have a vote about what dress you're going to wear or vote about what you're going to name your kid, I'd be like, I'm leaving. I'm done. Like,
the dress code, it started with some kind of poverty, so they had like only a few items for each group of, and then it just became, again, it became more like of checking out each other all the time, and
Mhm.
what do you have and what don't you have, and like we have to be the same. But I wanted to say and connect it to the Arabness, that I feel that the kibbutz kind of suppressed my Arabness and definitely my Jewishness, and both, because it's very atheist. Every kibbutz, like most kibbutzim, didn't have a synagogue. People don't put mezuzah on their doors. People are proud for not eating kosher. So my weekends were with that Moroccan Shabbat keeping grandmother, like modest, quiet cooking, um, religious grandmother. And the weekdays I was here, and it was kind of empty, um, of that. And I looked different. I was definitely browner. I know I look white as hell, but my colors were always browner. My eyes, my hair, my features were like different. And my classmates, the girls that were my age, were all blonde with bright eyes. Again, because this movement started with Ashkenazi Jews, which is
Right,
okay.
coming from Russia. Yeah.
But I was mixed race, mixed race. So that's a whole story, how my parents
Hmm.
met, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, we're mixed. So
Where's your
it
mom's
definitely,
family from?
that's a good question. And it's tricky because it's also mixed. Um, her dad's side is Russian, fully Russian, but a few generations back in Israel. And her mother's side is interesting because the grandmother, Geula, she came from Jerusalem, and she was Turkish, Spanish, Yemenite Jew. She was
Mhm.
black, Yasmin.
Mhm.
See
Mhm.
the pictures? She's a black woman.
Mhm.
And she married a Yeke, a German Jew, a
Mhm.
blonde, blue-eyed Jew. They moved together to the kibbutz, and there was it was a scandal to be black back then in a kibbutz, but she was Jewish from Jerusalem.
Mhm.
So was, again, like Israeli, black Israeli, and a German Jew who escaped before the Holocaust. And they were, like you said, everyone are refugees. Like Jews are fundamentally refugees.
Did you find growing up that, because now when I went to Israel, I found that I hear stories of how it used to be separated.
Yeah,
How it took a while, of course, when you have all of these people coming from all of these different cultural backgrounds, different education levels, different languages. Of course, you're going to have growing pains. There's going to be difficulty. People are going to feel marginalized. I've heard of like there was, bigotry from one group to the other and things like that. But maybe just as an outsider, it was my perspective when I went to Israel that all of that has totally settled down and that people generally are seeing each other. Like everybody is so mixed that you can't even begin to start separating people anymore.
that's for sure. And I think it's thanks to mixed marriages, because
Hmm.
that's where we are at. We have definitely mental issues from being mixed, but it definitely changed society. And my high school already mixed. It was new that my high school hosted also Moroccans from Tveria, Siberia, and not only from the kibbutzim around the Kinneret. So we were a mixed high school that used to be only for kibbutznikim. So that definitely liberated me, because I was very suffocated in the kibbutz with the Ashkenazi blondie girls, and I was very hairy, I was very loud, and very provocative, whatever, all these names
Yeah.
that they use because you're
Mm.
different. And so, but again, most of my friends were Ashkenazi because I was a kibbutznikid, and like, so I always felt like I have to hide my Moroccanness, my and
Hmm.
Jewishness, like being faithful is shameful. and ridiculous. Um,
Mm.
yeah,
So how did you end up joining a cult with all of, is it because you were trying to find a place where you fit, where
yeah,
you belonged? Because there were so many different conflicting like identities and places where you felt like you couldn't be yourself?
that's a beautiful way looking at it. I think I was a little bit depressed when I was 16, 17. Not sure why. Some people say maybe it was a medicine I took. Some people say, my parents divorced, like whatever, all these classicals.
Could just be the age too. That's a typical age for
Maybe
just, teenage
hormones.
angst. Yeah,
Yeah.
hormones.
And then um the military was nearby, like the mandatory service. And I was kind of afraid of it. I was like, I just want to get it over with because I'm a very non-disciplined person. Um, and I knew it's going to be hard for me and for my personality. But I was like, cool, I'm going to be like in this educational section and I'm going to be a teacher. I mean, I knew it's going to be okay. And then I was in touch with someone from my kibbutz. She was an activist today. I wouldn't talk to her because she's a radical left. But back then we were in touch because like in the kibbutz cultural events, she's like 60 something and she kind of guided me. Um, I don't know how to explain our relationship, but then I was at her house and she was like, my kids went to this program before the military. It's called Mechina, which literally means preparation. And it's a year of preparation to the military, as if maybe you should go to one of these, she said to me. So we checked out a few Mechinot online, and I really trusted that woman. I was like kind of admiring her. She seemed to, yeah, I don't want to gossip again, but she was very interesting, and and then I was like, cool. It made me happy to have something before I dive into the military that will give me some new friends, like you said, some new context. Um, and I always loved Jerusalem, and I wanted to explore this area. So I picked a place, and I can't say names, that was in East Jerusalem, in East Jerusalem. Um, So I picked a place that seemed solid because they said we're having a mix of secular and religious teenagers from all over the country. And you guys are going to bond and we're going to be, okay. And when I arrived, there were maybe 10 secular teenagers and 40 religious teenagers. That's a first. And you already paid you have to pay for them. So my mother paid for this program and we lived in this very extremely poor neighborhood because the point was also to volunteer there and help the locals or something, which was very hypocrite looking back. I'll explain why. And then, so this mechina, it had this leader that with over time discovered himself. You think there's a manager, okay, but like he's like a leader and people respect him very weirdly in ways that I did not know before. And so at first I was very happy. I was like, cool, I can be traditional here, I can be Moroccan here, I have new friends who are also mixed race and are traditional. Like I had this good friend, we're still friends until today, that her parents became religious when she was a kid. So she went to secular schools, but at home they kept Shabbat. So she was kind of like me in the way of like, she was
Mixed.
open
Yeah.
to both. And her father was Ashkenazi, Tzarfati, French, and her mother was Tunisian. So we were very similar. So it was very exciting at first to meet new friends, that's for sure.
Hmm. When
For
did
this
you start to
quiet,
realize that it was actually a cult, that it wasn't really the
what's
preparation
funny
that you
that
thought?
people from the outside tell you, oh, this place, isn't it like a cult or something? And you're in denial.
Mm.
No, I was in denial. I was like admiring my life there, my weird life.
Mm-hmm.
living with 4 other girls in the room. And we were studying Judaism, which looking back wasn't Judaism, it was very creepy doctrine and based on Jewish texts. And they were all Balei Tshuva, they were all converts from secularism to being in this little cult. And with time, they said, we are, obviously they said it from the beginning, but nobody understood what they're saying. They said they are an urban kibbutz. Listen to this. We are the new kibbutz. We bring what the traditional kibbutz brought to Israel to the city. We want to improve society. They were very condescending. We want to come to the poorest neighborhoods to improve them with our beautifulness and our whatever. And they live like a kibbutz, like 9 families there, that the leader is that dude. So there are 9 families, and they live like a kibbutz financially, economically. They share the money, and they all have to live in some kind of poverty. But again, it's like, it's coerced. It's not even necessary anymore. It's like, we're just doing this for his vision. And his vision was, again, somewhat Jewish, but also very his, about how to fix the world and how, and I'll explain. So this guy, he is a descendant of a Chassidut. So I'll
So
explain
what
a
is
little bit.
it, what I want to get to is like, what was the creepy stuff he was doing? Did he have multiple wives? Was he trying to get
Yeah,
you guys to give him money? Was it, like, cults usually have very typical things that are red
so
flags that you don't
I'm
really
getting
notice
I'm getting to
initially.
it because in Israel there's something called Chassidut, so the ultra-Orthodox groups that people see on the news.
Right.
Some of them are Hasidim. It's a very specific spiritual movement that just became culty and abusive towards women and everyone.
Mm-hmm.
He was a very small niche Hasidut, and he
Ah.
was a Zionist, so he was pro the military. So we thought, okay, he's fine, like he's like us. But he had creepy rituals. For example, when we had to stay for Shabbat with the Mechina, with everyone, with the teachers and with him and with our group. So everyone just went to his prayers, and his prayers lasted from maybe 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. and people were starving. Usually, like the prayer is from
Oh.
7 to 8, something like that, and then you guys are making kiddush and eating. And he like abused everyone because of his little tradition to pray slowly and quietly and with meaning for 4 hours.
He's controlling everyone. Mm-hmm.
So passive aggressively, because then he arrived
Mm-hmm.
at the table and everyone are literally, and we were so young, we didn't understand what's going on. So we survived, we snacked, we took, and then he's coming and he has a Hasidic outfit on Shabbat, not during the week. So he wears this black suit with they have this separating belt that separates their spiritual part from the bottom part. Not sure. Some people went deeper into his doctrine. I was not fully there. But what happened to me is that one of the teachers, who was a woman, and she was in the cult, I feel like what's culty about it is, again, like always asking for donations, getting money from the
Yeah.
government to exist, and eventually doing nothing with us, with the teenagers who came there and tried to do things to prepare for the military. They
Mm-hmm.
barely did. So they just take this money from the parents and ask for donations to continue his little chasser. It's called court. Every chassid has a court of his own.
Mm-hmm.
So and then I'll get to it. Sexually, they were not classically harassing, but they really talked about getting married all the time. And this place is known for having graduates that get married. And
Mhm.
I was one of them.
Oh,
And yeah, and it just happens and nobody does anything about it because what can you do? We're already 18 and then it's legal. But they just get into our minds. So I was dating a guy there. We were like very casual, basic, a teenage couple. And then one of the teachers just became artificially my best friend and made me confide her and tell her everything that's going on with him and encouraged me to be religious with him, which means not have sex with him unless we get married. Encouraged me to leave my work. I worked in a restaurant here in the kibbutz, and she encouraged me to leave it because they make me work on Shabbat. Make me.
mm,
So she was a teacher, an official figure in this place that just definitely crossed all boundaries with me, invited me to her
yeah.
home all the time and told me those things. And the Hasid, like the leader, he was admired. And again, like whatever he says is divine. And so that's the Hasidut is very specific. It's not classic Judaism. It's like you can talk about postmodern music comparing to classical music. It's like, okay. So Hasidut is like the kind of weirdish postmodern.
Mhm.
Um,
So did they encourage you or did they push you to get married to this guy that you were dating? And was he part of the cult also?
so he was with me in the program,
Mm-hmm.
and his family was religious because, like I said, 40 kids were from religious homes and 10 kids were
Mm-hmm.
from secular. And his parents were Orthodox.
Mm-hmm.
And so they encouraged us to be Orthodox, and his parents encouraged us to be Orthodox. And it's like you feel like they're supporting your relationship because they're saying basically, get married, like be serious with each other. So you feel, oh, this is so serious. Like you feel respected for being so it's called shomer negiah, someone who doesn't touch women, and only after the wedding he touches his wife. So my ex was kind of like that, and you feel like, oh, this is respect, right? You don't realize that it's a trap to very young marriage. And then so both sides really pushed us into it, and I feel like he passive aggressively did it because when I met his family just occasionally, I used to ask him like, does your mom like me? And he used to say, yeah, she does. She does like you, but she feels like you're dressing up too, like not modestly enough. She, everything was done for her. You need to keep kosher in our house. You need to keep Shabbat in our house to be with me. So that he also had definitely a very strong influence on everything. Not only the cult. And the cult, I was mentally part of them, not financially, thank God, until 23. I didn't
Oh,
see,
wow. Ever
yeah,
since you were 17 till 23.
it was
Wow.
mentally, I don't have the word in English right now, but in Hebrew we have a word that means that we say stagfanut, which means when you don't give yourself what you need, you kind of abuse yourself to be
Yeah.
spiritually connected. So they were like that, like eating less, doing everything slower. Uh,
Yeah.
you don't need anything materialistic. So this is why we
Mm-hmm.
did it like this, and they always try to bring us to the kibbutz, right? They were like,
Mm-hmm.
"Join us," and they wanted us to be a couple to join them because if you're not a married couple, it's not really beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, a lot of pressure. So I feel like there is sexual harassment there because it wasn't
Yeah.
directly from the leader, but it's like I'm telling you what to do
Pressure.
with your vagina right now.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Take
yeah,
it
for
away
sure.
from the guy and put it in when you get married. It's kind of,
Yeah, yeah.
you know.
Yeah, very invasive to say the least. Yeah. So how long did you stay married?
So until 2019. So we got married at 20 when we were 20. So we were married for 3 years. Again, until I was 23, I was like in those chains.
And how
Um,
did you break free from those chains? This is because
yeah.
your mind is indoctrinated at this point. Your mind is completely chained, and you're in a relationship with somebody who is
Yeah.
also chained. So it feels like it would
I
have
don't
been
know if
very
you know it, but
difficult.
in Judaism, there's also sexual routine. When you're allowed to have sex and when you're not. So that
Mm,
was very tough as well. And I think that broke me because
mm,
when you're on your period, you're not allowed to touch each other according to that little cult, to
mm,
touch each other, not even like this.
mm,
It's not every Jewish branch that says that, but
mhm.
for 2 weeks, you're not allowed. And then 2 weeks, you have to have sex, like to get,
Ah, yeah.
because you're ovulating. And
Mm,
that broke me. And we got so distant. And imagine we both served in the military. So we had a lot of distance between us.
mm,
So I had time to think, let's put it that way, with myself. And I had time to have
mhm.
other people in my life in the
Thank
military.
goodness. Mm,
Yeah. And then when he finished his military, we finally actually lived together. And I was like, let's go abroad, like every Israeli person. Let's go abroad after the military, do our trip, and see what's going on. In that trip, everything fell apart. We had the space to actually, you know, do, bless you, to do as we like. He wanted space from his mom, by the way, but he couldn't give it to himself until we went abroad. And I cut my connections with that cult, with that teacher that also taught me everything about the purity rules and all that. She was obsessed with me, really. I was her project. And I remember, yeah, so we were more daring when we went abroad. And then it's a long story and we don't have time. But yeah, there I decided with the help of another woman that I want to separate. I didn't dare to say the word divorce. Um, I was afraid of that word. It's very an ugly word um, for everyone, in our society. In Israel, divorce used to be a very ugly word. Now it's a bit more casual. And then, so I wrote him a letter and I was like, dude, this is not going anywhere. I took off my hijab, my kisui rosh. It wasn't full. It's not like a hijab, but I covered my hair and it was terrible. And then I stopped dressing modestly there. I went to parties because it's South America. We went to South America. How can you like not go for it when you're 22? But we were still married. So then, blah, blah, blah. We went back to Israel after a few months. We met and we were like, are we going back to each other? And there was such a gap. I can't tell you, Yasmin. There was such a gap between us, and I can't even explain it.
like you
So
were
we
two different people at that point.
so different, and you realize that everything we went through was just because of that pressure from other people, and we don't even know each other. We don't even love each other. It was all like, just stay together and have sex after the wedding. That was like,
Mhm.
and so we got divorced without children, and so that was easier because in Israel, the religious institution makes it harder on women to get divorced when you have children. Yeah, but it took me nightmares, Yasmin. It took me a long time to leave the mental indoctrination.
Yeah.
I was very depressed. I left this story, this event with clinical depression, with eating disorders. Um, I was in the bottom, in the bottom. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I mean, people think that physically getting yourself free is the hardest part, and it is incredibly difficult to get yourself physically free, but it is actually the easier part. It's
I
the
had
mental
nightmares
chains.
about the leader. I had panic attacks that he's coming to get me, like kind of
Mm.
psychotic stuff. Yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah.
But and were you were lucky enough to have your mom though that you had like a rational person, I guess, that you could go to
Yeah.
who could help you to maybe overcome that trauma.
Oh yeah. Without her, like you say in your book, I wouldn't be here. Like some people, thanks to them, we're still here, Yasmin, and thanks to them, we talk right now and
Mhm.
about this. And so my mom definitely was one of them, my mom and my sister. Um, yeah, I don't know what to say.
That's wonderful. I'm really, really, really grateful that you had the support of your mom and your sister. And your mom was divorced too, and she knew that divorce wasn't a bad word. She knew that divorce can be a beautiful, freeing word. It can be the most
Yeah,
liberating word possible in the language. So
really?
you're not going to be
Oh,
getting
I
that
wanted,
kind of judgment from them, right?
yeah, that's what I wanted to say before, that in this period, I also admired that abused grandmother of mine, right? The house,
Mm,
I was like, I want to be like
right,
her. I have to be like
right.
her. And I thought it's an ideal because that's what they told me. Like a working woman, a feminist woman is a bad woman, and now
Yeah,
it sounds ridiculous. Like, how did you
yeah.
buy this shit? But like, of
That's the
course,
patriarchy because they want to keep you in a loveless, abusive marriage with some
so
guy
it
that you don't.
it looks so deep, and now I see how superficial it is. Back then it was like, wow, this is like, this is so enlightening. But now you see how superficial it is and how it's about control. And so
Mhm,
my mom, yeah, she was the feminist figure in my life without words, without reading, like giving me books about feminism. I just saw her working, a divorced woman working her whole life. So
mhm,
eventually, and I think a lot of girls can relate to that at some age. You don't want to be like your mom, you
mhm.
know. So you run away,
Definitely true for
deepest,
me.
darkest forest. Yeah, I want to talk to you more about your book, but we don't have time.
Yeah,
So you go to the darkest forest as long as it's
yeah.
far away from your mom, even if it means to be a housewife.
Hmm.
That was
Yeah.
me. But eventually I was like, it's living or being like, it's living or being, I don't know, it was not living or being like my mom. So I preferred being like my
Hmm.
mom living than feeling like I'm not alive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because then you can see, as a kid, you want to assert your independence, you're rebellious, but then as an adult, you can recognize like, oh, actually my mom is a great role model. And that sort of teenage need to just be
Yeah, that rebel,
contrary is
the
gone by then.
rebel.
Yeah, yeah.
Think the rebelness kind of calmed down because I was like 23, 24, and I saw that she has actual tools to deal with life that I need to
Hmm.
to adopt. She got divorced. She found a job. She did things that eventually I found myself wanting.
Hmm. Hmm.
I
Hmm.
thought it's ideal to be married and
Yeah,
covered
yeah.
uh, because it's, yeah.
Because that's what they sell us.
Yeah,
That's
that's what they
what the
told me.
patriarchy sells us, yeah. So is that what led you to become a feminist today? Because now you write for a feminist newspaper. Um, so it's obviously all of this whole experience. And I'm
Yeah.
wondering, because I've spoken to other feminists from much more religious background than yours, probably, I know you have the cultish religious background, but that's not really real religious. But there's always sort of a discomfort with speaking about any kind of sexism in Judaism because you don't want to give the haters any more reason to have something to say about Jewish people, right? Because they're always they're going to make up things even if they don't have things anyway. So it restricts women from speaking up publicly about the restrictions in the religion of religious women, like more in the Orthodox communities and obviously the Hasidic communities and stuff like that. Are you finding with your work, because you write, you're a journalist in Hebrew, right? You're the magazine you write for. Is it, yeah, and it's called
I'll
She
tell you about
Reads or Politically Correct, which means she reads, correct? Yeah. Correct. Yeah. So
Corret.
tell us about it.
So when I left religion and tried mentally to liberate myself, I bought the most feminist book I could find, which is called The Second Sex by Simone de Beauvoir. And I started educating myself and I bought more books and I read online and I was like, I want to know everything about feminism. And like I said, before that, I had no resources besides my mom's existence. Like it was only that. So reading about it was very empowering. And then I started, so Politically Correct started as and it still is, an online magazine, newspaper. So I just wrote a post. It was about my name and how the biblical story about my name is very feminist because it's about also Deborah. They had a story together in the Bible, and how interesting it is to see that two women are the stars of a biblical story and blah, blah, blah. So they posted it on their page. And since then, I've just been writing for them occasionally when I have something to say. And I gotta say, like the team is great, but I'm more right wing than they are. So it hasn't been easy to like find my spot there and to amplify my voice, because even our interview, I was always afraid that they're gonna somehow filter it and like not publish it or something because it's about Islam. Yeah, so that was it. But today, I'm working on this English initiative that I call Yalta, and my purpose is to give a voice to Zionist feminists who support the state of Israel. So this page is on Instagram and it's in English. And there were a bunch of girls. Basically, the collective is a bunch of Jewish girls from all over the world, but any Zionist woman is welcome to write with us and to publish her thoughts about what's going on. And yeah, the purpose is to bring this voice that Zionism is not a bad word. Zionism is true liberalism when you look at the Middle East and what's going on there.
So are you
And
finding that you're reaching girls that have been brought up in more religious communities, more Orthodox communities that are able to find your work and maybe um,
yeah, that's
feel
why I
like,
didn't call it, at first, I didn't call it feminism, Zionist feminism. At first, I wanted to call it just Zionist women because I wanted to find also these girls. But I think when you say Zionism, it's enough for a lot of Jewish women to feel safe in this feminism, because we
Mhm.
both know that Marxist feminism is anti-Semitic and
Yeah,
intersectional feminism is sexist sometimes
yeah.
and all that. But I did want to answer your question about ultra-Orthodox um, sexism in
Hmm.
Judaism, that it's a tough question. Like you said, you have tough questions and you don't want to sound or give the haters more material. So I'm just gonna say something interesting about Judaism is that also men have to be modest. So even the most modest cults in Judaism, the men have to be super modest as well, and both sides are abused. I'm just gonna say
Yeah.
that.
Hmm.
And now women actually have this interesting movement that because the ultra Orthodox men in Israel, they just study Torah, not even Torah, but Gemara, and don't work. So they started working and they have this feminist movement because they wanted to see their kids eat.
Yeah.
They're amazing. I love this movement and they want to be in politics more and like they have this whole goal. And but there's a lot to say here. You talked about the Ashkenazi Jews abroad, and now we're talking about this kind of Judaism, and I don't have time, but of course, there is sexism there because wherever there are men, there is sexism. Maybe we'll put it that way.
Yeah.
So it's not about, even in the highest societies, we can find sexism, not in the.
True. But I do believe that religion sort of provides cover or
Yeah,
provides,
insurance.
it's, yeah, yeah, justification. Yeah. So it's more difficult to fight if you're a religious woman because people will bring you
Oh yeah,
scripture and they'll
that,
say, oh, look.
I
Yeah.
feel like that's why I left eventually the Orthodox Judaism, and today I'm not. I'm not Orthodox. I'm Jewish. I'm doing my thing, but like I'm not Orthodox because I was offended and I was insulted by texts and conversations and lectures that I heard and read. I was insulted by them, and I felt like I can't move and I
Yeah.
can't. And eventually, I grew up in a kibbutz where women work equally to men, and their femininity is kind of also oppressed, but okay. And I think that was stronger, and my mom's legacy was stronger, so I was able to say, fuck that, it's stopping now.
Mhm.
And I wanted to say, by the way, that reading your book, I admired that force you keep telling about, the little fire you had in you that kept you going,
Mhm.
even when everything around us is dark. And that's the secret for anyone who's wondering. That little
Yeah.
fire in you, whatever sparks it, whatever encourages you, whatever makes you a little bit stronger every time, that would, in the darkest places, that what keeps us going. And so I left the Orthodox discipline and the culty discipline that I was in, and I feel like I'm more of reform today, if anything. Um, but like I said, a Zionist feminist. That's all I can say right now. I'm
Mhm.
not
Mhm.
anything
A
super
Zioness.
Zionist. Yeah,
Awesome.
definitely. So the Judaism has books of woman shut up. you know,
Yes.
we have books saying
It's
that.
one thing. All religions can agree on their treatment of women. That's one thing all of these religious men
Yeah,
can agree on. All
yeah.
right. We're going to open it up to questions and comments now, and we're going to start with Courtney.
Unmute yourself, Courtney.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Not so nice to meet you, firstly, Yasmin and Yael. I just want to preface with like my background a little bit with the question, if that's okay. So I'm Anglo-Indian and like my dad was born Jewish, but my mum converted. And I grew up in Australia, which also is very much an Ashkenazi experience here. And when I was going to schools when I was young, I was very different. I was the brown little girl, and everyone was blonde and white. So growing up, I never really knew that there were brown Jews. There were very few brown Jews I had ever met. And when I went to Israel, all of a sudden, I look Israeli. I look like Jewish to them, right? When I was living there, everyone's speaking Hebrew to me, and I'm like, oh. So I was I was very much like, I guess, ostracized when I was in the Jewish schools when I was younger, and it really disconnected me from my Judaism because I was like, I don't fit in, and I didn't really feel like I fit in anywhere.
Yeah.
And so I guess my question did you ever feel bullied when you were like living in this Ashkenazi kibbutz? And also when you kind of left kibbutz life, did you realize you actually it was very common to be brown and, you
Mhm.
know, the white Jewish experience is actually the lesser common one, I guess.
less common, and also the Mizrahim have criticism over the Ashkenazim, and you're suddenly discovering like, oh, this is okay. So that's a good question because I kind of forgot to say that. I was trying to hide the train. So I was bullied even by Mizrahi boys, by the way, because I was hairy. I had hair on my
Same.
hands, face, and they were like, "What the fuck, you monster, you ugly monster! Like, take this hair off." And
Yeah.
girls bullied me, not directly because I was Mizrahi, but there was something about me that was. We came back to the kibbutz when I was 7. 80% of the kibbutz is family members, my relatives. But for these girls that I grew up with, I was new and different and brown, like you said, and they definitely abused me until maybe the age of 13 when we became sort of friends.
Hmm.
So yeah, I was
Yeah.
mocked. I was mocked. I was bullied. I was isolated in school and in the kibbutz. Um, and I don't know who brought that whole take your hair off thing. If it came from the boys, which is another phenomenon we need to talk about another time,
Mhm.
because they
Yeah.
were like, but being a Mizrahi woman is ugly. Being an Arab woman, being brown, being hairy, is not I call it the Nazi beauty standard. You're not the blonde, tall, transparent, whatever.
Mm.
So it's a whole thing. It's another topic. Yeah, it's the beauty standards.
And how did you feel when you left the kibbutz and realized that like everyone else, like there's a lot of brown, hairy Jewish women out there and you're not, the only one?
I think so. My Mizrahi family, for example, they're very groomed. You say groomed or
Yeah.
broomed? They put a lot of makeup, they do surgeries, they dye their hair blonde. So I never did all that. So even when I met Mizrahi women, they were like that. They were like very always changing themselves and modifying themselves. So it was
Mm.
hard to feel beautiful in Israel as a Mizrahi person, as an Arab woman, with Arab features. And I have so many topics in my head, but I think it's weird, but only abroad at the age of 26, 7, which now I'm 29, I started feeling like I might have my own beauty. I felt ugly and I had problems with my looks for years and years. And nobody understood why. It was like, but you're pretty. But I hated my looks, hated. And only in the recent years, I was like, you can be both Arab, Jewish, and beautiful. And at this age, you care less about beauty anyway. But so, yeah.
At this age, she says, as if she's like
At
87.
this age, like truly, you start caring less, and you've already been
Yeah.
through the whole era of hating your looks when it mattered to
Yeah.
you. But also being Jewish, you have this like stereotype on yourself that you're ugly because you're Jewish. You might have a big nose, you think. You might have a whatever, big eyes, and you're an evil monster. We
Hmm.
speak about the Holocaust since we were, 7 years old. I don't know. And we see this propaganda, this Nazi propaganda, and it doesn't go in and go out. It stays with you, these images. So being an Arab Jew, I believed I'm doomed to be ugly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for answering. And yeah, it's really nice to hear you talk about a really similar experience I had growing up. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Great question, Courtney. That makes me so sad to hear because can I just say, like, Arab women, Persian women, Indian women, like Middle Eastern women. Like if I was a man, I would be going for those kinds of women over the
Yeah.
basic, let's, like Taylor Swift type, just like
Like if you're,
basic
yeah,
bitch.
beautiful, if you're attractive to someone, it's not about beauty standards are very narrow. I also wrote
Yeah.
an article about that in Yalta.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I very much like when I was younger, wish like I used to wish I was white because
exactly.
everyone around me was white. And now I
Mm,
feel very lucky that I have dark skin because everyone wants dark skin now. So
yeah.
yeah, it felt like a very unique experience till I heard Yael
Yeah.
talking about it.
Yeah, I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
be blonde. I wanted to have blue eyes so badly. And then I
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
recently um did self-therapy thing. I started collecting things that are brown in the world and I like and are pretty, like a
Hmm.
tree or the ground, the earth, a Bambi. I was like collecting brown things to love myself. And since then, I feel like I love my eyes more and I love my hair color and whatever.
Yeah,
That's beautiful. I love that.
yeah. Thank
Interact.
you.
That's a great exercise. That's wonderful towards self-love. Beautiful. Thank you, Yael, for sharing that. Graham, you're next.
You were kind of for a while immersed in a what sounds like a very ultra orthodox, perhaps niche cult. And one of the things that strikes those of us who have studied uh, Torah and classical Judaism is that some of that is if you talk about patriarchalism and there's a scale from 1 to 10, this is about 12. And one of the passages in the Torah, and this is in Leviticus, I believe, is that if a girl was married and on her wedding night she couldn't prove that she was a virgin, and they used a cloth, to prove that, she would be taken to the doorstep of her father in the village and stoned to death. And
Oh,
there this is actually now I think Reform Judaism feels they have moved far beyond this. They won't pay any attention to this kind of thing. Probably Orthodox as well. Ultra Orthodox and the Haredim, they have to deal with the Torah because they study it intensively. So my question is, did any of that sort of version of Judaism, and from it comes, it's deeply rooted in the Torah, did that become part of what you experienced as a member of that cult, and which I'm sure would have been oppressive, or was it just oppressive without some of that ancient
no.
stuff?
So this, I'll answer the second question first. The This little cult-like group was, like I said, niche. So they had their own thing. They were very about like the new agey spiritual people, like toxic positivity. So they had toxic Judaism, and it was very about being spiritually involved and engaged fully all the time. So it was mentally very how could I say that? It was a lot of there were a lot of mental chains. And like I said, I developed eating disorders there, but nothing about the sexual and marriage part was um supervised, I would say. It was over the phone, and the leader, he was the one who led the ceremony in our wedding, which I didn't mention. Um, so it was about them. I felt like I'm trying to please them and the leader by getting married. So he was like a part of the marriage, but the sexual thing, no, because they have this like postmodern Zionist thing, and I think they don't perform a lot of things that other Hasiduyot do. Nobody stones anyone anymore, but they do
Well, in
shave their
Israel.
head. Yeah, in Israel and in Judaism, stoning is not there anymore. But the whole, everyone here probably watched on Orthodox on Netflix. So It wasn't that kind of group because that's a very heavy Chassidut, a very big one. It's called Gur, I think, the one she was at. And this one is like a little family that got a few people around it and do their thing. And like I said, the leader was not involved sexually with the people in the cult, but he was definitely influential over what we do. A lot of people, like a high percentage of the graduates of this program, got married, like within each other. So we were a lot of couples getting married so quickly and early and young, and some of them are still married and whatever. But I was like, I got out in time. And about the kibbutz, people here, I actually just got to Israel a week ago, and seeing the people in the secular kibbutzim are very focused on hating Benjamin Netanyahu. They're not focusing on anything else but hating him and trying to take him off the leadership while he's managing this war. I never voted for Netanyahu. I'm not in love with him. He's just really, I don't know, 15 years he's been a prime minister. It's not, of course it's a lot. Of course it's too much, but I don't have this like loathing for him that I feel is anti-Semitic. And I'm starting to feel somebody pays them to do that, even the Israeli ones, because it looks so weird at this point. So a lot of, now he's in trial, and a lot in the streets, you can see a lot of posters against him. And we just saw today in a bookshop, we saw a book called Mom, do you remember the name of the book? She's here. Yeah. Mar Hafkara. Mom, how would you translate that? Are you listening?
Yes, yes. I couldn't find where the unmute. Yes. It's Mr. Abandonment or something like that he's abandoning the hostages.
The hostages. A whole book about how he abandons the hostages. Like no focus on Hamas, no focus on terrorism, nothing. Like only BB. And they say we're obsessed about him, you know. They say we adore him, but it feels like they think it's like he's godly and he has superpowers. He doesn't. He doesn't have superpowers.
Courtney had something that she wanted to just add. Courtney, did you want me to just read it, or did you want to unmute yourself?
I'm happy to just quickly say it. Sorry, I was listening to Graham and then I had this thought that I just wanted to clarify that Jews in the diaspora that are white are not considered white enough. So I didn't want to discredit their experience of racism. But obviously within the Jewish community and culture, there's, you know, a difference between us, I guess. But generally, I didn't want to discredit their experience of racism.
Yeah, it's true. All Jews, it's called anti-Semitism for some reason. Very dedicated racism towards Jews.
Yeah. That's all I had to say.
So we are ready to wrap up now, but I feel like you opened a can of worms when you started talking about the settlements there, Yael, and I feel like we should probably have you back to speak about that specifically.
But my topic. But
yeah. But I will, you know, before we conclude now, I just want to ask you if there was anything else that you wanted to talk about. Oh, Ira, I'm sorry, we're just wrapping up, but I'll get
about
you
the settlement. And,
yeah, I know. I heard you. That's why I clicked on before we're wrapped.
Okay. All right. Let's try and zoom through this. If it's going to be about the settlements, we're not zooming.
No.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that the cutting edge anti-Semitism we're suffering now here in the United States and Europe is because we are considered too white.
Yeah.
We are considered white adjacent, not because we're not considered white enough. The right-wing anti-Semitism was based on that. The left-wing anti-Semitism is everything white must be erased.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, Yasmine says that so many times in her advocacy. She says when they wanted, when Islamists wanted to, they turned Jews into white people because it fit them in the equation of oppressor and oppressed. But that's a simple lie that we're white.
Well,
However, they can be
I
demonized.
always considered myself white, and I don't have any problem with that.
Yeah.
But these are linguists, and it's also a question of ideologies. But let's not get into that. That can take a long time.
Yeah, but that is a good point, though, Ira. Thank you. So yeah, Yael. So is there anything that you wanted to talk about? Any topics that you wanted to share with us? Let us know where we can follow your work. We didn't even get to talk about your music. Where can people follow you?
If you search Yael online, you can find all sorts of weird stuff. I'm making music, I'm writing articles.
You're teaching Hebrew,
and I'm translating to Hebrew if anyone needs help. I want to translate your book, Yasmine, to Hebrew.
I hope so. Yeah.
It's not translated yet. I don't know what else to say. There's so many topics, so much to say. I do want to leave us with this thinking about beauty standards, Judaism, and again, I'm a Zionist feminism, so feminism is a part of me. And after October 7th, many of us felt betrayed by feminists, and I want to start this new movement that is called Zionist feminism. Maybe it's old new, it's not completely new, but to refresh it, to reestablish it, and you're welcome to join me. Yeah.
Beautiful. So Yael, I hope you'll join the podcast community. And then if anybody has any more questions or comments or want to, just engage in discussion with you, you can do so there. And of course, that's where you can share with us more about this Zionist feminist movement that you're starting up. And I'm sure there will be lots of people there who would be interested in joining you. So thank you so much for coming today and for sharing so much of your story with us and being so brave and being so real with us. And thank you so much.
Say toda rabba. Thank you very much in Hebrew.
Toda.
Toda rabba. So rabba is much.
Very much. Okay.
Toda rabba. And I love you guys.
Aww. Right back at you, beautiful. We love you back. All right, take care, everyone.
After hearing all that, you might be left wondering, what can I do? How can I help? Well, this is why I created a nonprofit called Free Hearts, Free Minds. We are the only organization dedicated exclusively to helping these free thinkers. We empower them with our programs and supportive community, lifting them up so they can heal, speak out, and begin to make positive changes, not just in their own lives, but within the broader community around them. If this is a cause that resonates with you and you want to make a difference, one way to do that is by donating to Free Hearts, Free Minds. Because not enough people care about this cause, we need people like you to help fuel this change. You can donate via our website, freeheartsfreeminds.com. Thank you. Every dollar you donate makes a difference.